Sponsored by Catchpoint, the leader in digital experience management. Hi folks, Joe McCarthy here from Catchpoint. And in this DNS Series 2 video, I'll be talking about DNS security and the things you should be on the lookout for. So in Series 1, I explained how the application delivery chain works and that many companies outsource their DNS to third-party providers that have a global presence, all to reduce latency. Here's some DNS security terms that we've all heard. DNS hijacking and DNS spoofing. These style of attacks are very similar, and they're also commonly known as man-in-the-middle type attacks. In DNS hijacking, the attacker tricks the end user into thinking they're communicating with a legitimate domain name, when in reality, they're actually communicating with a domain name or IP address that the attacker has set up. In DNS spoofing, the attacker tries to change the DNS records returned to the querier, the person asking, to a response the attacker chooses. So hijacking and spoofing, they're very similar. A very common location these types of attacks take place are when purchasing Wi-Fi access at either airport terminals and hotels, so be aware. Another clever trick used is called DNS cache poisoning. This is a more specific type of attack, targeting cache name servers in an attempt to control the answers stored in the DNS cache. Now this type of attack can potentially impact thousands of users and unfortunately can be very hard to detect and or protect from. So it's always a good idea to have DNSSEC deployed and enabled. And then there's the DDoS or distributed denial of service attacks. One of the more famous DNS DDoS attacks happened to Dyn Corporation back in 2016. Now Dyn is one of those third-party DNS providers that services hundreds, if not thousands, of corporations located around the globe. A DNS DDoS attack, which also can be called DNS flood or DNS amplification attacks, it's where the attacker attempts to exhaust the DNS resources, the CPU and memory, by flooding or overwhelming the servers hosting a particular DNS domain with requests. This renders it unusable so people cannot reach the company's website. That's a pretty big deal if your name is Amazon. And this is where Catchpoint separates itself from all other vendors. To stay one step ahead of malicious activity, you need 24/7/365 synthetic monitoring from points around the globe using multiple vantage points like backbone, broadband, cloud, last mile, and wireless providers. These numbers speak for themselves. This is how Catchpoint can protect and monitor your corporate assets from the types of attacks we've just talked about. Okay, to see this in action, this DNS test is built off the DNS test template. And remember, this is just one of 20 test templates pre-built for you to use. Now this test is designed to perform specific DNS resolution functions for a CDN provider. And you can see the domain we're testing against. We're utilizing synthetic testing, which is continually running on backbone nodes located around the globe. This way you'll instantly know when any location globally is having a performance issue or a malicious attack. In this view, I'm looking at the last hour performance graph of this test, and you can see a spike that matches up with some downtime that happened at the exact same time. To view the specifics about each incident, simply click on the area of interest, and here I'll select the downtime spike to see what's going on. So this view shows us that the DNS test from Beijing, China experienced the downtime and some very high response times. Not very shocking, as we all know about the Great Firewall of China, where they control all communications in and out of their country. They're famous for DNS manipulation, using any one of the types of bad behavior tactics we talked about earlier. Something we've seen here at Catchpoint is quite often companies are unaware that their DNS traffic, or any internet traffic for that matter, traverses China's airspace. This is intercepted by the Great Firewall of China, resulting in either very poor performance or complete packet loss. Yet another reason to be continually monitoring your traffic. Okay, to see what's happening, I just need to select any one of these waterfall charts to dig in deeper, and of course, I want to check out Beijing, China. And this takes me to a very detailed view in the DNS transaction, showing me every level in this DNS transaction's journey. This transaction only has 2 levels, so I'm going to click on level 1 to see how things started. So here I see the IP 111.13.164.108, And this is Catchpoint's test system located in Beijing, running the DNS test to www.akamai.com. IP 192.5.6.30 is VeriSign's global registry located in Reston, Virginia. This uses one of the authoritative name servers listed below to resolve this namespace. Now clicking on level 2, it shows that this IP, which is a9-66.akam.net, was the name server selected to resolve the DNS lookup. If I go back to level 1, we can look at all the different authoritative name servers, and sure enough, there it is, a966.akamai.net. So going back to level 2, we can see the traffic never made it back to the Catchpoint test system in Beijing, so the Great Firewall of China strikes again, here showing the error, the connection attempt timed out, or the connection host failed to respond, the Great Firewall of China. So that's one example of what DNS tests, synthetic tests using Catchpoint can do for you. Let's look at a DNS test that is a little more realistic, well, not realistic, but has a different outcome than the Great Firewall of China. Look at the Dallas DNS transaction. So in this view, we can see there are not only 2 levels, there are 9 levels of DNS transactions that was touched during this single request. This shows you how deep and wide you can go with the analytics provided by Catchpoint. So that's a quick glimpse into just some of the DNS shenanigans you need to protect yourself against to ensure your environment stays healthy for your customers and employees. And for some interesting reading on DNS best practices and things to be wary of, please check out the blogs listed here. As always, thanks for watching, and let's be careful out there. Sponsored by Catchpoint, the leader in digital experience management.